So Judge Boasberg dog walked the Trump administration yesterday afternoon during the hearing, and he did such a great job at it that Donald Trump decided to throw little Marco Rubio under the bus. Like, he was like, what executive order? What are you talking about? I didn't sign any executive order.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But
never mind this. Yeah, so quick recap for those of you who don't know, Donald Trump has been falling behind his predecessor, Barack Obama and Biden, and his rhetoric about all these criminals being in the United States did not match the actions. So he decided, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to racially profile just random young Latino men. I'm going to claim they're part of this Venezuelan gang, and I'm going to ship them all off to El Salvador. Marco Rubio had negotiated a deal with the El Salvador president to have all of the Latino and Hispanic men that they round up sent to this notorious prison. Now, the little wrinkle in plan is that it wasn't lawful. Donald Trump issued this executive order after boasting about it a couple of days before, which is great because I gave ACLU ample time to find 5 detainees to be their clients, who they filed a complaint on promptly after Donald Trump issued his order on 3/35 last Saturday, straight to the court. Luckily for them, they got Judge James Boasberg, who was a senior judge, who for 7 years served on the United States Counterintelligence Commission Court. So he knows his stuff. So they're lucky they drew him. And Judge Boasberg promptly asked during a hearing the Trump administration, if there are any planes in the sky, I need to determine whether or not this is a proper use of the act. Can you really summarily ground up and round up people without giving them individual due process and opportunity to defend themselves? So if there's any planes, guys, please bring them back. He said this orally at 5:35. Oral orders are orders. The Trump administration claimed they didn't know that that was his order because the order hadn't been memorialized until 7:25. 2 planes have taken off around the same time he was orally saying, do not let them go. If they go, please turn them back around. They flew out in the sky anyway. And there was a 3rd plane that actually took off after 7:25. And I know this because Judge asked them to submit a declaration explaining what was going on after he found out the planes were already landed in Honduras and El Salvador, and it was kind of too late. Actually, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller, the Homeland Secretary Kristi Noem had done interviews saying that they decided purposefully to just go ahead and do this despite the order. They said this on the record to the media. And so did Caroline Leavitt. Donald Trump's mouthpiece also said that it was an active choice to send them.
You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m. But he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing. A verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were in the air?
There's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court.
So the judge is like, wait a minute here. Pam Bondi entered this case. She quickly ran to the court and said, here what's happened. The 5 people who had filed this claim, none of them were removed. They're still here in the United States. She said that, your order was 7:25. We'd already sent them on. We promised, the 3rd thing, not to use this act until this case is resolved. And also, by the way, we're going to appeal your decision to stay this. The judge denied that request, and he also said, that's not good enough. What I need you to do is this past Tuesday, I need you to tell me how this go down. When did the planes take off? Who was on it? All the details regarding this. Rather than do the details, they send a low-level field officer named Robert Cerner to make some claims about how randomly there's these gang members that are doing all these horrible crimes. He didn't mention any specific member. He just said on the docket they've done all these crazy things. And by the way, the 3rd plane that took off after your 7:25 order, that plane contained people who were already subject to be removed anyway. So they weren't removed subject to this law that's in question. The people in the plane that took off after your order around the same time, technically they could have brought back, we'll bring them back. And here's the interesting thing you should know about this. First, immigration is a civil issue. It's not a criminal matter. To be here in the United States is unlawful, is a paperwork infraction. It's not necessarily a criminal thing. It's not something that goes to the criminal courts unless the people are already criminals already through the criminal processing course for doing something wrong. Robert Cerner said that only 32 people were actually criminals. 54, he said, that were on the third plane that took off after 7:25. He said they were already subject to removal, so they're gone. And he said there were about 54 or so that were detainment orders, meaning that they had already had evidence to keep them and detain them and do some investigation to see if they should be removed. And there was another 120 something that just had non-detainment. I mean, these were like just people who just like had the piece of paper to say come back later, and they shaved off their heads and they shipped them off. And because they were tattooed, because they're Hispanic, and say, yeah, that's the cruelty. That's the cruelty of all. That's why it's like abhorrent that they did this. And the judge was like, this doesn't give me the details. I need you to give me details on Wednesday. So that same Robert Cerner says, I believe I heard that there was cabinet level discussions about perhaps executing the state secrets privilege. That's his declaration. The judge then says on Thursday, you know what, you guys are playing games. I need someone to give me a sworn statement by Friday at 10 a.m. Someone who is aware of the cabinet level discussion about whether to evoke the state's privilege, secrets privilege, or give me the information. Either give me the information or you tell me specifically you're going to invoke that, and I need someone who's pursuant to that. You know what they did? Another, like, deputy attorney general, not a cabinet level, files a declaration, and this deputy says, I am declaring that what John Cerner said is accurate, and I can attest to the fact that I am privy to the ongoing discussions. Mind you, he asked specifically for them to detail this information, and rather than detail the information, he instead just says, I attest to what this other guy wrote. That's it, one page. So inaccurate, so disrespectful, so not responsive. They knew very well though what that man was asking, and they decided to play games and do these things. And so you know he was not having it. So they had a hearing, and at the hearing, here's the things that he went on and said. So he came in hot and heavy. He said that the pleadings and the language in the pleadings were intemperate and disrespectful. And he said, did you think it was hypothetical when I said bring them back, or did you understand what I meant by that? He's asking the attorney who was there. So the attorney Ensign says, I understand your intent. You meant that was to be effective at that time. And he says he had a conversation with his clients, at which point Boasberg said, you know, I often tell my clerks before they go out into the world that their most valuable treasure is their reputation and their credibility. And he said he asked Ensign to ensure that he retains that lesson. And he says, why did you send me a low-level person who has no clue what was going on? Why was that? This is an important, critical case here. This is a big matter. You're talking about habeas corpus pleading, and you send someone who doesn't know when the planes were taken off. What's up with that? He also asked, why was a proclamation signed in the dark and then they rushed people off the planes? He said within a couple of hours of the proclamation being published on Saturday afternoon, these people were already on planes taken off. And he says, he asked Ensign, do you think the government can summarily deport people without determining whether they fall within the proclamation? Like, did y'all have enough time to determine if all 235 people actually fell within that proclamation? It's impossible for 2 hours to determine that. The answer is no. He also points out the fact that there has been news reporting about people who are saying like they couldn't find their family members, like their brother who like was working at McDonald's got picked up and all because he has a tattoo and he's Latino. What the freak? Like, he's not a gang member. The DOJ responded to his question saying, do you really think you could summarily just deny individuals due process and just send a bulk people all at once? And the DOJ says in limited context, possibly. He says, you know what, imagine you're sending someone to a country that's going to torture them. Like, how is that going to work? Does that make sense? And now we know that some of the people were not even Venezuelan. They sent women. It was such a shoddy operation. It was a rough shop, really quick, dirty, disgusting, hateful, mean, vindictive, just cruel thing to do. Because his administration is cruel. And congratulations to you people, the 77 million of you that voted for this nonsense. Because I know some of y'all think y'all good people, but you're not if you voted for this. And even if you didn't vote this, you had to know something like this was coming. Because the man announced he was going to be doing all these cruel things before. He said he was going to be doing these things. And y'all was like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's a great idea. Destroy America, destroy democracy, make us a laughing stock. Turn us into Russia, yes, please. Finally, he says, I will get to the bottom of whether they violated my order, who ordered this, and what the consequences would be. Boom. So, you know, the Homeland Security intentionally flouted this because I said, Kristi Noem, Deputy Chief Stephen Miller, and Caroline Kravitz all said that they purposely did it. Pam Bondi went on the TV saying all sorts of stuff, shaking her neck, but yet notice that she did not put herself on she didn't put herself on the declaration. She sent low levels to declare. So, as the world turns, keep up JJ Legal here in all my socials. Consider joining my private communities where I share a little bit more details. Get my outlasting47.com tracker that I'm going to do to update this case, including the road to the Supreme Court, the cabinet pick bingo, and more stuff, good stuff. $7.99. You get to support my work here, and we get to continue to just try to have some fun where we can in this chaotic administration.